All right, let me start all over again. Hey, this is Richard Wright, and this is the Bladeology podcast. Enjoy your evening.
We're going to jump into it like we do every week. Welcome to another episode of the Bladeology podcast. This is a special week. We're on with a special guest host. We've got Chuck with us. Chuck, how you doing?
Good. How are you? Happy to be here.
Good. All right. Happy to have you on, and we've got an even more special guest. We have J.D. Smith. How you doing?
I'm hanging tough, hanging light, walking tight, tripping light. We're on. Let's go.
Nice. All right. That's the way to do it. It's I'm pretty sure it's episode 27 if I remember that correctly. And I think this is going to be a good one. And I think we just had somebody else join us. The hell? Hey, what's up? Who's that?
Nick Chuperin? We're recording?
Yes.
Yeah.
We're on the air, bro. We're on the air.
Oh, great. No, I had some news as soon as I walked into my building, so I was like, oh, I gotta sanitize.
You got to stay safe out there. All right, so let's jump into it. JD, thank you so much for taking time and coming on with us. I'm looking forward to talking to you about a whole wealth of things. We just interviewed Richard Wright last week, and you came up in the podcast talking about hammering some steel and the New England switchblade movement, which we'll get into. But how did we get here? Where did this all start? Take us from the top, if you will.
For me, well, it started when I was a kid. When I was like maybe 10 years old, and I lived in New York City. I remember one summer, it was 1959. I was strolling around Central Park during the summer, and I got down as far as the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and so I decided to just go in. I had what a kid that age might have in his pocket, like a dime or a quarter or something like that. And that's what it cost to get in at the time. And I strolled around the museum and finally got around to the arms and armament section. And I remember seeing a beautiful jade-handled shamshir that was encrusted with emeralds and diamonds. And I remember looking at the blade going like, what are those wavy lines all over it? And just pretty much like a kid, put it out of my mind for the time being. But I didn't know what they were, but I was curious about them. And I remember a friend of mine had an Indonesian kris on his coffee table. I'm in my 20s now already. And I pulled it out and I saw those lines again all over the steel. And I was like, what is this stuff? I had no name for it. Until 1979, I cracked open a copy of Soldier of Fortune on the newsstand. And there was an article about Bill Bagwell and how he was building Damascus steel fighting knives. And I looked at the pictures and suddenly I had a name for it, Damascus steel. And at that point, I was kind of like thinking towards the future. I'm going to have to figure this out one day and find out how to do this. I remember feeling like I really want to learn to make this stuff. And I was extremely fascinated by it. So we're going to fast forward ahead to 1981. I'm a year out of college, slightly underemployed, and I was dating a silversmith. And we eventually got married and started a family, et cetera. But at the time, she taught me silversmithing from the ground up. And we were working for a company called Gebeline Silver, and we were part of their repair and restoration department. And we were informed one day that the blacksmith at the Saugus Ironworks had made for us some specialized silversmithing tools, and we were to go up and pick them up from Saugus Ironworks from him. When I got there, we were told to go down to the smithy and collect them there. When I walked into the smithy, and I smelled the coal and iron. That was it for me. I don't know what it got me in touch with. Maybe something primal, something ancient, something in my epigenetics. Who knows? But I knew at that point that's my next move. That's what I've got to do. And I hounded him for months and months and months about taking me on. And finally, he relented and found a special government program that I could be a part of where he could teach me this. And I worked with him for a couple of days a week for 4 years almost. And he taught me traditional blacksmithing, and he was a pretty good bladesmith himself. And whatever he knew about it, he taught me. So I made my first straight knives there. I made my first pattern welded steel out of wrought iron and old files there with him striking. It wasn't a real classy looking material, but I managed to bang something together and etch it and to see a pattern. I was thrilled. So I went on from there, basically. I worked at the silversmithing gig for a number of years until we decided we wanted to go out on our own. One of the reasons was the silversmithing company decided to drop the repair and restoration department. And my wife and I, we picked it up. We bought their tools, we bought their client list, and we started servicing their clients on our own. At which point, we got a studio in the South End. And within a couple of years, I decided that I was out of that and I was going to open my own bladesmithing studio. So I found a space in South Boston and began doing that.
Wow. Okay. That's pretty. That's
so
pretty
we're
intense,
up to we're up to 1990, 1991 by this time. Yeah.
Okay. Huh. So from silversmithing jumped right into wow. So I mean, at the time that wasn't a thing, though, right? Like in the 90s, like you were in South Boston with a forge and a knife studio.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Just clearing that up. Okay. No,
it was an old distillery building that they had converted into artist spaces, and I had a studio in the basement.
Where? So just wait. Out of curiosity, what is it? Anywhere I would know in Southeast? Where was it?
East 2nd Street.
East 2nd Street. It's been a minute since I've been over there, but all right. Yeah, it's certainly not something you'd see now. That whole area has just been totally stripped and gentrified, but that's pretty gnarly that you were there in the 90s building knives. That's pretty neat. Okay. All right. So where from then? What was next?
Well, I stayed in that studio from 1990 to 2001.
Oh, wow.
So I was there a good 11 years. And during that time, I had joined the ABS, and I went in, of course, as an apprentice and got my journeyman stamp, I think in, 95? Yeah. And I had also joined the Knife Makers Guild by that time. And in 1998, I got my master stamp from the ABS. And you know, what they say, the rest, as they say, is history. Also, during that time, I began a program at Massachusetts College of Art and began a bladesmithing program at Massachusetts College of Art. So it was one of the few schools where you could learn bladesmithing at the college level that I taught. And out of that program came Andrew Mears, Zach Jonas, Tom Ward, Paul Cooper. And I do believe, Chucky, that you came and took my class at some point.
I took your Damascus making class.
Yeah. So
wait, so you take it at Mass Art?
Yeah,
I did. Yep.
Oh, wow. So Andrew Mears went to Mass Art?
Yeah, he's a graduate of Mass Art. He was the first one to actually graduate Mass Art with a degree in bladesmithing.
Dude, that's pretty righteous, to be fair. That's pretty cool.
That's pretty cool. Now, is Mass Art, is that considered trade school, or is that where you got actually a degree for it, or it was just kind of like a learning center?
No, it's you get an academic degree. I mean, they offer undergraduate and graduate degrees there.
Oh, wow.
It's the only state-run art school, I think, in the nation. I want to say almost the last time I remember. The Mass Art's a pretty special occasion.
Yeah, it's the only state-run art school.
Yeah. Okay. I spent a lot of time crossing the tracks at Huntington Avenue. I had a bunch of good friends go there.
Is Mecca a state-run art school? Maine College of Art? I'm not sure.
I was almost going to say Cal Arts.
How about RISD?
Brown School of Design.
Yeah, RISD too. I'm not sure about that. In any case,
Mass Art just is art, though. There's no there's no other
only art. All kinds of art.
Yeah.
Textiles, right, so computer, jewelry, blacksmithing, sculpture, all art, illustration, just animation, just art.
That's pretty cool.
So you started that whole thing yourself at the school for bladesmithing. There was nobody doing it before that.
Nope.
Wow.
I walked in off the street one June morning and had a few blades with me, and I went right up to the 3D chairs office, and I showed them what I had. I had some Damascus blades, and I said, unless you offer this, you really can't say you're offering the latest in art metals, technology. You can't say that. And he goes, you know what? You're right. You want to do a guest artist spot? So I did a guest artist spot. Made some steel, did some hammering, and they brought me back a couple more times between 1991 and 1994. And they finally said, would you like a job here?
That's great.
So, I built a program there, and like I say, the rest is history. I graduated many, many fine bladesmiths, and, people have enjoyed that course for close to 25 years.
Oh man. Okay. That's some serious lineage. Okay. Wow. I mean, that's an impressive roster of smiths, and to build a program from nothing into something, I can't imagine, must have been a little bit tricky at times, to say the least.
Well, the school was behind it. Oddly enough, the school fell behind it, and they basically, anything I asked for, they bought. Hydraulic press, decent power hammers, other tooling, forges. They were behind the whole thing. It was very successful in no small part because the school was enthusiastic about backing it.
Right. I mean, that helps to be working with like a willing partner, someone's into it and, wants it to succeed just as much as you do. That certainly helps.
Absolutely. I don't think there's any other way to do it besides that,
right. Yeah.
With an educational institution at any rate.
Yeah. Right. Yep. Yeah. Okay. So, bladesmithing program, Mass Art, and, okay, what's the next step from there? Where do we find ourselves in the there to the present tense?
Well, the present tense, I have to say that I'm actually kind of retired.
Nice.
Or semi-retired. It's just not an everyday thing for me. I'm more or less chilling now at age 70, going on 71. I've worked a long time, and I don't want to be pounding on anvils and stuff anymore.
Right. Sometimes just chilling is the way to go.
Yeah,
that's totally reasonable. All right.
Yeah,
well then,
got grandchildren now. I like playing with my grandkids.
Oh my gosh. All right. All right, this is okay. This brings up the life outside of knives. I swear it doesn't exist, but apparently it does. You're telling me. So okay, I trust
I
you.
don't believe it.
That works. Yeah, right. All right. Well, let's jump back a little bit. Let's build some historical timelines here. Um, tell me about the crew in Rhode Island. Tell me about the connection with Bill, with Richard, with Chuck. Tell me about the New England guys. Let's jump back.
Well, I'm trying to recall now. I think I met Bill at one of the NCCA shows back in the day. I don't even recall what year it was. It was probably 1990 or 91. It could even have been as early as 89. I don't recall exactly. Okay. But when I fell in with these guys, I was actually the only one actually doing forge work. And I was feeding McHenry and Steele too. He needed stuff. I was feeding it to him, and I'd go down to his ranch and we'd hang out, and I'd be absorbing a lot of stuff from him and asking him a lot of questions about this, that, and the other thing, pestering him, really trying to get my folder thing off the ground. And I don't think I would have gotten it anywhere near as far off the ground I did at first as I did without his help and assistance. I mean, he was absolutely invaluable in that. And I owe him everything in terms of like what I know about folders and automaking.
Wow. All right. Yeah, I mean he certainly seemed to be an individual of good rapport between the people who knew him and spent time with him.
Mm-hmm.
Sad to bring up his passing. But good that he imparted so much knowledge, right?
No, he imparted a lot of knowledge. He was very generous with himself, very, very generous. And on occasion, he'd come up to my studio in South Boston, and we'd spend a few days, just making pattern welded material and, doing stuff, hanging out, going to blues clubs after, and
That's pretty legit. Okay. All right. Yeah. Getting it done at the blues club. Okay. Well, tell us a little bit about the steel that you make. We were going over it a little before we started recording here, but we were getting into some ethos behind some of your Smith work.
Mm-hmm.
You want to tell us a little bit about that?
What specifically? What we're talking about? Why I do it and what I make and why I make it?
Yeah, all that sounds pretty good. Yeah.
All right then. Well, I mean, anybody who knows my work or is familiar with it in any way knows that I mostly, almost 100%, they're weapons. I make weapons. I don't make friendly, little pocket knives and things like that. Everything I make looks dangerous and scary. It's a weapon. And the reason for that is it's largely, again, philosophical, because weapons are a really special class of human artifact. I feel they're special in the way that they're able to do something no other human artifact does, which is separate a free man from a slave. Because if you have a slave population, there's one thing they are never permitted to own or touch, and that's a weapon. Why? Because a weapon can defend your life. You have life, you have liberty, you have the pursuit of happiness, you're free. Well, no one can take the things that sustain your life, your food, your clothing, your shelter. No one has any right to those things or any right to deprive them from you. Okay? So since you have the right to have free access to those things, you also have, by extension, the right to defend them and the means by which to do it. So in my world, if you have the right to life, you have the right to defend it, the right to the means of that defense. And if you can do those things by right, you're free. And if you can't, what are you? And for me, there's nothing further to cloud the issue.
A really great explanation of why you make what you make.
Yeah, it's a pretty clear. You have that pretty well defined. There's no gray areas there for sure.
Yeah, most
Has that always been like that, or is that like a last decade?
No, it's always been that way.
Okay, all right.
and most knife makers, when you approach them, it's why do you make what you make? It's never usually. They always try to avoid the word weapon. And your explanation is no. I make a weapon. I do what I do because it's a weapon.
It's a very weapons forward, weapons positive way of thinking.
And I'm familiar with your work, so like obviously you're not making, like you said, you don't make small knives. You're making like short swords and things like that. Like these aren't like, it's not to open a box, like a box of a package. It's to decapitate someone or delimb someone. Half of them.
As someone I heard once, I think Bill McHenry actually said this. He says they're objets, murder weapons, thinly veiled as objets d'art.
That's great. That's a good way to describe them. Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
Weapon forward.
We've got Bill to thank for that one.
Okay. So what about, okay, I mean, that's a good segue. What size are we talking about for people who are unfamiliar with your work? How big are these things? How sizable are they really?
Anything I
Anywhere
make is it could be any size. If it's a folder, it's going to have at least a 4-inch blade. If it's a fixed blade, anywhere from like 6 to 9, 10 inches, and upwards.
Wow. Okay. And so always pattern welding, or just that's what you do, period.
I would have to say 95% of what I make is pattern welded. I feel that it's the way to actually make the material you make the blade from an expressive medium of its own merits that can stand completely on its own artistic merits.
So when you're referring to pattern welded, are you referring to just all Damascus in general, or like mosaic Damascus? Because
all Damascus in general.
Okay, because when I've always referred to it, I've always thought of pattern welded as like mosaic, where you restack it. I could be wrong. I'm not a forger, so I was asking.
Well, all classes of Damascus steel can be put under the heading of pattern welded steel.
Mm. Have you ever done the I mean, I'm assuming you have, but I have to ask. The sort of it was popular for a bit. The sort of extruded. There were like skulls in it. I forget
the powder can Damascus and stuff like that.
Yeah,
yeah.
Of course, I've done that stuff, but honestly, I don't favor it personally. It's for my taste, it just doesn't look serious enough. It looks kitschy.
Right.
And, when you're making, I personally feel when you're making a serious weapon, it's got to reflect that seriousness. It's got to reflect that intent and potential.
I know exactly what you mean. I'm not the biggest fan of the can Damascus where they're extruding like demon skulls or random things like that. But I do like particularly Greg Sims' examples of his kitchen knives, where he kind of mixes he cuts little squares, mixes the images he makes, then he actually reforges it back together with actually patterned Damascus that he makes. And so there's about 3 or 4 layers that's stacking up to these kitchen knives. There's a wide, flat surface, and that's what his knives are known for, is the Damascus he makes with them and the artwork within the Damascus itself. It's not just one pattern. It's sometimes 2, 3 patterns, and then these little boxes that show different artwork that he's made within it as well. Chuck, are you familiar with Sim's work?
Yeah, I know who he is. He does a lot of kitchen knives. He does a lot of San Mai.
Yep, he's in upstate New York. I know he goes to the New England Metal School a lot.
So, JD, do you have a particular Damascus pattern that you enjoy making more than others, like Firestorm or Turkish Twist or Crush W's? Do you have a favorite pattern?
You know what? I've used to say that I really didn't, but that's not true. I actually like patterns that are derived from W's a real lot. You can do a lot with that type of pattern. There's so many things that you can combine it with, there's so many ways to mix it, match it, cut it, restack it, and come up with really, really, truly interesting patterns. But generally speaking, I like them all because you can do so much. What I mean by that is you can do fine layered patterns, bold patterns, mixed fine and bold, mixed twisted and other things. There's so many ways that you can reform, reshape, rearrange different patterns. That's the fascination for me. Making the material that can stand on its own artistic merits. That's what makes it so much fun for me.
Can you go over a little bit of the crush W's?
The crust W's occur when you take a pattern, you just make straight layers, then you turn it 90 degrees from its original orientation, then you smash it down. Basically, you just hammer it so that the lines are now perpendicular to the axis, but you've crushed them down so that they become splayed out. And then when you fold it again, that's when you start to see the W form. And what I'll usually do is I'll do maybe 15, 20, even 30, sometimes 40 layers before I turn it 90 degrees and begin crushing it down, at which point I'll do at least 6 to 8 iterations of that. I've also been known to start my crush at 200 layers, take it up really high, and you can get some really incredible optical effects by doing it that way. Lots of chatoyance.
Some serious. Okay, wow, 200 layers. That's no joke. You were talking about the beauty of 100% creation, what we might call now like a sole authorship piece. But you were actually talking about making the steel to make the Damascus. Is that correct?
No, I don't do that. That's not one of my particular quirks. I know a lot of guys who like to make the steel to make the Damascus, but I don't see any personal need to do that myself. I would rather just buy good virgin stock from like Aldo Bruno, or whomever I can get it from, and work it from there, because go through that whole rigmarole to smelt it and whatnot, that's not my cup of tea. I don't put it down, but it's just not my cup of tea. It's not how I want to work.
Focusing on the pattern welding itself.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. Crush W's. What if you had to best describe the process of so what's the chemical process that's actually happening? Can you get into that at all? That's always sort of intrigued me. Like, is it just heat, or is it the bonding of the steel, or is it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. If you had to say scientifically, give a technical description of what pattern welding is, it is solid state fusion. The phenomena of pattern welding is essentially at the molecular level electrical. What happens is when you get the two pieces of metal close enough and put enough energy into the system as heat, what happens is the molecules and atoms become extremely energetic, and they're moving very quickly. And the friction of that movement basically is what's causing heat, what causes it to become incandescent and light up and glow. Because that's just molecular activity accelerated to a very high level, okay? And when it's in that state and they're brought within close proximity to one another, two molecules rather, will share outer orbits. The electron shells of adjacent atoms will cross over and share borders. And that's where the bond occurs. So when you hammer something or use it in a hydraulic press, or put it in a hydraulic press, you're not actually pressing it together as most people think. What you're doing is you're putting the two pieces in close enough proximity so this what is called covalent bonding can occur. And it's essentially, again, an electrical phenomena down at the atomic
Okay, so the
level.
hammering process is not actually the bond. It's like you're describing. Okay, interesting.
No. It's just to make the pieces get close enough together so that this bond can occur.
Okay, and so then when delamination happens, that's an improper bond, or they didn't get close enough.
That's correct. The most important welds that you make when you're producing a piece of pattern welded material are your first weld and your last weld. The first weld, because that establishes the integrity of the entire structure, and your last weld, because your last weld is your most important because it has had the least amount of time to make secure bonds within that structure. As you work the metal, right, more and more atomic bonds occur. And you've had the least amount of time at your last weld to make that happen. So my common practice, my best practice is in your last weld, you do not start too close to finished dimensions. You start very wide from finished dimensions. So if you want to finish down to 3/16, you start with two pieces that are 3/8 of an inch, or two pieces that are 1/2 an inch thick, and then work it down from there, because the additional heating time will form greater and more numerous bonds, which give the material greater integrity.
So you usually start your forge with some thicker stock and 2 or 3 layers, and then you forge it out and fold it over to get your layer count.
I don't.
Oh, okay.
That's one way of doing it, but I start with pieces that are anywhere from 40 thousandths thick, 50 thousandths thick, like that. That's so I can start with more layers and accelerate the layering process more.
Yeah, that's how I've usually done it.
Right.
Okay, and I was wondering because I was like, oh, that's a lot of forging now. Go from half and then fold it. It also will do some pretty cool distortion doing it that way too, though.
Well, when I say 1/2 an inch, I mean after you've already gone up to like a couple of hundred layers or wherever it is you're going.
Okay.
You want your last weld to start with thick pieces, not thin pieces.
Now, what do you mean by last weld? Are you just pretty much the same as last heat?
Your last welding procedure, your last fold, so to say.
Okay. That's a very good way to describe the process of Damascus. Very scientific. I've been to a bunch of hammer-ins, coupled with Aldo. And you were a teacher, of course, so I'd assume you have a lot of experience talking about it. But it was a very clean-spoken way of describing the process of Damascus making on the final bonds.
Mm-hmm. Well, as well, the whole fluxless welding thing, I was kind of the first one to get out in front of that. I was reading, I perused the internet for papers and treatises on metalwork and metallurgy and whatnot. And I remember about 8 years ago, I found something about what they call the oxygen reduction process. I started reading about it, and it's about how to purify metals by removing the oxides from them and reverting them back to their pure state. Okay. So I said, might this work for making pattern welded steel? So I tried it. At that point, guys had already been using kerosene and things, and some of them were completely abandoning the use of flux and using kerosene as a means of, I'm not sure what they were using it for, maybe to evacuate oxygen, possibly. But I thought about the whole process, and I said, well, what happens when you expose the steel to heat and oxygen? You get oxides. What the oxygen reduction process does is it basically takes the formula for combustion, fuel, heat, and oxygen, and impoverishes the oxygen factor. so that what happens is the process of combustion starts to get oxygen from anywhere it can find it, and it takes it from the oxides and reverts the oxides back to pure iron. And when they're in that state of proximity with enough energy, they bond. And when you weld without flux, the bonds are more complete, they're more secure, and you get it done faster. Introduction of flux is nothing but a contaminant. And trust me on this, it's entirely unnecessary. You don't need it. On Knife Maker's whiteboard, I did a demo of bonding a billet completely, just with 2 or 3 hits in one direction, then turning it on edge after I initially bonded it and completed the drawing out procedure. Most people wouldn't even try that with a flux weld because it would break apart, because the bonds would not be secure enough with one welding heat. But the bonds become extremely secure with only one welding heat when you do it fluxless.
Prove them wrong. All right, I got you.
You go back to Knife Maker's whiteboard and look up my posts, and it's there. I demonstrate it.
So is there any pattern that is more or less strong than another, just as far as a weapon goes, or are they all equally? That doesn't matter. Like they're just as strong.
Oh, I've thought about this one a great deal too, and what I've come up with that the jelly roll pattern is probably one of the most secure patterns if you want to make something that's never going to fail. The reason is when you jelly roll something up, it doesn't have any open edges.
Like you're just literally talking about like in layman's terms, like a Swiss roll, just like two materials
just roll it
up. Okay.
Just roll it up. And it's because there are no open edges. When things fail, they usually fail at the edges. And when you jelly roll it, there are no edges.
So I've thought about this in the past too when making Damascus, because I've also made materials that aren't true Damascus, more like mokumes, where they're more of a braze bond. I came to my own conclusion where what made sense to me, where if Damascus, based on what they explain the processes, you get one homogeneous piece at the end there. So if the welds are clean, and once you clean it up and you see no cracks, technically it should be just as strong as normal steel. That's just my thought process on it. I see you have more experience in this than I do. Unlike Mokume, where I've literally had it peel apart while bandsawing, or the newer materials like Q-Zirc, which is copper and zirconium. Like I've made mainly I've made stainless Damascuses and titanium Damascuses. I've only really made carbons at hammer ends because they weren't ever letting me do flux in our forge. But I've never tried the fluxless carbon method.
Try it. You'll like it. You'll see immediately it's better.
I gotta give it a try. I don't have access to forge anymore. I used to work out of NJ Steel Baron's shop for about 3 years before I moved back to New York. So I was over there once in a while. I'd forge over with them. But I'll be back over there soon. That you got to press in the rolling mill. I want to go play with the rolling mill.
I've done a number of posts and articles. I did one on the ABS Blade site where I completely broke down the pattern, the fluxless welding process. And everyone who's tried it is amazed at how simple it is and how effective it is and how much better it is than a flux weld. Kevin Cashin at some point, I remember Kevin Cashin, Christoph Derringer and myself, we did a road trip, something that Christoph had arranged up in Canada. It was called the Can Iron Festival, the Canadian Iron Festival. And up there, I demonstrated it as well. And Kevin Cashin at some point, he's kind of a science guy where pattern welding is concerned and the metallurgy of bladesmithing is concerned. He's right up there with people who know a great deal about the technical aspects of it. And he has access to things like micro photography and things where he'll polish a section and really examine it under high magnification, what he's found is that all flux wells have small inclusions in them of flux and other non-combustible material. But the non-flux wells are absolutely free of any contaminants in the weld.
Imperfect surfaces. Huh.
Right. Plus, he's noted that you have only a small amount of decarb at the edges, where pattern welded micrographs that he's taken have a lot of decarburization within the billet itself, which is absent from the non-fluxed welding.
Nick brings up kind of an interesting point. Have you ever ventured into any of the higher jewelry grade stuff, like the Makume or the Makume Gain?
I've made a lot of Mokume Gane, yes.
Okay, all right, that's right. Silversmithing. That must have been a popular order at a point.
He's probably made more exotic Mokume Gane consisting of silver, rhodium, platinums, I'd assume.
You know what? I never got into the really exotic stuff. My former apprentice, Kevin Klein, is doing that now. He got into it when he was my apprentice from 2012 through 2015. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And he got on the Mokume train pretty quickly, and it's become a favorite technique of his. As a matter of we're talking about Mokume, I was both he and I were invited to do the Mokume Artisans of North America show in Tokyo.
Oh, wow!
So we exhibited some Mokume of our Mokume pieces there
in Tokyo.
In Japan, yeah, in Tokyo in 2016, 17.
It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I want to revisit some Mokume Gane. I started when I was first learning to forge a Mokume Gane, and Aldo gave me a couple tips, but he never really made it. And there's not much info about making Mokume Gane properly online, except just clean it really well. And I made it, but the point of decollescence, I had the brass melt out on me a lot of times.
Yeah.
I had more luck making silver and copper. Every time I involved brass in it, 1 out of 3 times I'd miss that little window and the brass would melt, and then
brass is tricky.
You hit that squeeze and then just splatters everywhere.
Yeah, brass is tricky.
Yeah, I've attempted it like 6 times, and that's what second third. So about twice I had the brass melt out, and then most of the time the silver copper always kind of worked out. That was a lot easier.
Yeah, I like silver copper. I like fine silver and copper the best for me personally, because that interface between the silver and copper, that eutectic that forms at that bond, gives a distinctly different color than the silver or the copper when you pickle it in ferric chloride. It comes out pure white, and the silver comes out a purplish, and the copper comes out kind of a pinkish brown. So you get a nice 3-color piece of material with that.
Yeah, I was always trying to find some way to blacken the silver and not blacken the copper, but most of the chemicals ended up blackening both.
Yeah. Try ferric chloride, like a weak solution.
I've tried that. It'll do like a silver patine, like you mentioned, like a bluish purple hue to it.
Yeah.
It's been a while. I gotta get back over to Aldo's and try some of their new forging equipment. I want to forge some stuff out. I still got stainless billets in my shop that I have to clean up. I don't know how much you worked with stainless billets, but performance knife steel stainless billets are a pain to clean. It just becomes really hard. And then
I haven't worked with the stainless materials, but Will Brigham, man, he's doing some pretty extraordinary work with stainless.
I've seen some of his.
Man, his material looks fantastic.
Yeah, but the problem is there's a lot of loss, and 2, it's very prone to cracking. Sometimes you get these cracks that are a 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch from the edge going into the billet. There's just nothing you can do about them. You're forging within a very small temp window, and if the temperature changes a little bit and you overwork it, or just this one crack keeps working out, sometimes you're just better off chopping the crack off or getting it off before it spreads. The last ones that I made were a lot better. I stopped stacking them and roughly grinding it to shape. I started actually face milling all the sides to where there's a precise fit, and that greatly, like 75% less cracking. But if you just kind of grind it closely within like even a 16th of an inch or bandsaw it to where it's really close, like normal carbon, you're gonna get a lot more loss. You're better off putting in that time machining everything square.
Yeah.
It was a whole different animal.
Yeah, I imagined it would be, and I think I've avoided it for that reason, that the kind of working processes that I have available to myself and what I'm after pattern-wise didn't seem to really be suitable for stainless.
Yeah, you could do a lot of the mosaic stuff, re-welding it. The problem is any of the mosaic stuff where you have to re-weld it, it takes a lot of work because you have to clean it up every time, and then there's the loss every time. So you don't see much mosaic stainless Damascus out there, even for sale. Very few guys do it. Mike Norris is known for doing it. The titanium, it's the prep work is a pain, but forging it's pretty nice. It moves like carbon Damascus. Moves pretty easily.
Yeah, I've got a term for material. I call it material attrition. What you lose in the process
just fell by the wayside.
Yeah.
JD, take us back to some show stories. Tell us about some of your what was your first Blade show?
I think my first Blade show was, if I'm not mistaken, it was 1992. Yeah.
Pretty early.
Yeah, I gotta admit.
Was that in Georgia?
It was in Georgia. I don't remember a whole hell lot about it. It's been a while. What is that, like, what? 1992. What is that?
18 years?
Just a couple. It's just a few years ago.
Oh, wait, no, sorry, 28 years.
Yeah, it's 28. It's almost 30 years ago.
And years, whatever. So what do you remember? Do you remember what you brought to Blade Show, or did you just go just as a spectator?
No, I was exhibiting. I was showing. I had a table, and honestly, it's a long. I don't remember what it was, but what I had there with me. But it was probably some Damascus daggers, fighters. I was starting to really experiment a little bit with art knives. Paul Jarvis and I were working together at that point in time, and we had made a few pieces, and so I probably had some collaborations with him there too as well. I remember the first Guild show, we took a major award there. Also a show out in Oregon, the Oregon Custom Knife Show, we took a major award out there. And so kind of my show career started with the Blade Show, the Oregon Custom Knife Show, the one we do here with the NCCA, that one too,
but the Mystic Show and the Marlboro Show.
That's right. The Mystic and Marlboro shows. Yeah.
That is that the Eugene show? Is that show?
The Eugene show, yeah. Right. The Eugene. That's a great show, by the way. If you haven't done it, you should think about it.
I think that's probably one of the small handfuls of shows that I haven't done. Is probably that one actually, and the Hawaii show. But that
we did a hefty amount last year.
Yeah, fair amount of shows. Blade show. Yeah, I mean, I guess you've been doing it. Did you do it sort of every year since 92 for a while, or was it sort of
for a while, up until at least 2005? Oh, wow. I was going every year.
That's a fair amount of time. That's a bit. Did you share a table, just a solo table, road trip down, fly down? It's always quite the experience.
I always have my own table. I would usually be in the ABS section.
Okay. All right. And you would bring your own knives? You'd bring billets to sell, both?
My own knives.
Okay, just your own.
Billets to sell. That has never made sense to me personally. I as a rule, I don't do it. Only a few people I'll make steel for if they ask me to do it. And they're not that many. Certainly Richard's one. Bill McHenry used to be one. For me, it just didn't make sense. If I spent that much time putting something together, what could I get for it? $300-400? Where I could take that same billet and turn it into $3,000 or $4,000.
Right.
By processing it myself into something. So it just never made sense to me as a business proposition to sell my steel.
No, I mean that's logical.
JD, do you want to talk about some of your knife making processes? I know that you tend to forge to shape, and you do your rough grinds on a belt grinder, but do you do most of your, how else do you do most of your shaping?
Well, yeah, as you saw the couple of pieces that I put up there before we were actually on air and online here, but I do try to forge to shape as closely as I can, because material attrition. I don't want to waste material. Also, some of the patterns I do are fairly managed and arranged, and if you do too much stock removal off of them, you're gonna lose things. It's not gonna present the kind of appearance you're after.
And then do you do a lot of shaping on stones?
Stones. Oh, yeah. Now I know what you were after, Chuck. Thanks, son. Yeah. Yeah, I do a lot of my shaping on stones. The highest belt grit I will use is probably 60.
Huh?
And after I'm off a 60 grit belt, I take it to stones.
Wait, so like hand stones or like a wet wheel stone?
Do you know those $5 stones you get out of Harbor Freight and in the Home Depot, the 2-sided carborundum stones? I'll go through like one of those to make a knife. I buy them 4, 5, 6 at a time.
Wow,
holy moly! Okay,
so I do my shaping. I establish bevels and things like that on stones. I don't know why. I just like that process. And once I get it down to the point I'm ready to take it to a finish, before heat treating up to 220 grit or so, I use die maker stones. I use hand stones for that. I like them because you can change the shape and configuration of the stone. You always have a fresh cutting surface. They work for me better than paper. Actually, the knife maker, the great Billy Mace Immel, turned me on to those die maker stones. And he turned me onto those in 1992, and I haven't looked back. I've used them ever since.
Yeah, I love using this over sandpaper. Unfortunately, I mainly hollow grind, so I don't use them too much for my grinds. But things like swedges and profiles, they work great on. I'm actually in the process of building a reprofilometer for one of those.
What's that word?
It's a reprofilometer. It's a
you can't even pronounce it, dude.
Hey, it's a machine that does things with it. So essentially, imagine if you had a jigsaw that held the stones, right. So it'd be an automatic way to sand, and you adjust the stroke. They're expensive. They're like $1,500, but I felt like I picked up one of those Husky Air jigsaws with adjustable stroke, probably $20, and make an attachment for it. I think for $20, I can make one of those machines. It's kind of a project right now during COVID.
That's kind of like opposite of the reason I use them. I use it to slow the process down, not speed it up. At the point I'm ready to use hand stones, it's a relaxing process for me. I like the time it takes. It takes a lot more time than if I went up 3 or 4 grades on belts. But the result I get, for me personally, is much more satisfying. I prefer it.
Yeah, the way you talk about stones, I think that I feel like you think that a grinder is an instrument of brute destruction, and that a stone is a fine piece of
a finely massaged.
Yeah, something like that. Although I got to tell you, as a stock removal knife maker, I'm pretty good at it. I can take things up to 400, 500, 600 micron belts, and do finish with micron belts and things like that. I can do it.
Right.
I just don't find it as satisfying.
Sure.
Nor can I get the kind of nuance and a kind of fine detailing that I'm after with belts.
Wow.
I find the stoning process to be much more useful to me, and it's more in accord with my temperament.
So I mean, a real like meditation in knife making is what you're talking about. I mean, the time involved would be, I don't know, you tell me. What's the time involved? Like triple the amount?
That's interesting question, because once in a while I like to really kick it old school, and from the forge I'll just go at it with bastard files. I'll just knock the scale off it with muriatic acid for a few hours, get a little scale off it, then I'll just file it. And I found that it doesn't actually add that much time to the entire process, maybe 3 or 4 hours additionally.
Oh, wow. Okay. I'm going to account that to your decades of knowledge and skill, because I think that it would probably take anybody else a bit longer. So I'll
one of the things I can tell you is, like, I've seen people use files, and most makers don't know how to use a file properly.
Okay. That's probably a fair, yeah. Okay. I think that might be true about grinders in some cases, but I'll just keep my mouth shut on that one. That's fine. I mean, that's stones and files, huh? Wow. Okay. I mean,
Files are tricky. I learned to use my grinder properly before I learned to use a file efficiently.
I'd say probably a better way of approaching it would be the other way around.
Okay. All right. Okay, so what about, all right, process. What about the rest of the business? The hilt, the guard, the handle, the pins. Let's get into that a little bit. Favorite material, mosaic pins, non-mosaic pins.
Non-mosaic pins. If I'm going to use pins, they're either going to be like naval bronze, new gold, phosphor bronze, one of the kind of like soft colored bronzes, or silver, or stainless steel. That's what I'll work with. Mosaic pins, they don't personally appeal to me.
Okay.
It's not a look that that grabs me personally.
Yeah.
It's totally legit. Don't get me wrong, but just not for me.
Right.
Just not for me.
Mono steel or multi steel guards.
Usually, I'm going to do a pattern welded guard.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. And
pattern my fit. If I'm doing Damascus blades, the fittings are going to be Damascus.
Ooh. Okay, all the way. Why not?
All the way.
Same pattern as the blade, matching, or specific patterns for the guard.
You know what? I've always liked to pair them off, like fine patterns in the blade, bold patterns in the furniture.
Interesting. Okay.
That's how I generally I like to work that way. I like to contrast the pattern densities of the furniture and the blade. I like to have some sort of contrast.
Interesting. Okay, that's pretty far out. All right. And all natural handle material?
Always.
Okay.
Oh, really?
Always. Always.
Always.
I'm not a micarta guy. I'm not a G10 guy. No.
Forget it.
No.
Nonsense.
Forget it.
Okay.
Again, those materials are totally legit.
I mean, they might be.
They're just not for me.
Yeah,
not for me.
So hardwoods, stabilized hardwoods, ivory, shell,
African blackwood.
Okay.
Ironwood, Bacote, Brazilian rosewood, ebony. I like your fossilized ivories, and I like shell. Those are the materials I favor most.
Okay. The real fine high stuff. That DIW though, that desert ironwood is like man, that seems to be a current throughout the years for a lot of people, and it's coming back in these days in style. It just doesn't want to go away, which is great because it's not a bad material at all.
It's beautiful. It's gorgeous.
Well, the naturals tend to cycle back around like every 5 years or so. Same thing, Mother of Pearl's made a resurgence, in, at least in my and Chuck's industry, folders. It's been kind of dead for a bit, and now everyone's like Mother of Pearl everything.
You did mention that you had dipped a little bit into folders, but mostly just straight knives over the years. What was the...
That's funny. Because a lot of people don't even know I make folders, but I make them all the time.
Oh, do you? Okay. All right. Okay. Well, tell us a little bit about the folder game. Tell us what's good. What was the last folder you made?
What was the last folder I made? 2013
Nice.
or 14. Yeah. I made a folder. That's probably the last one I made. Yeah.
All right. So
it was off of a pattern that I'd used 3 or 4 times.
Got you. Just manual folder, or auto?
Manual. That last one was a manual.
Okay.
But I've made lots of autos. If I'm known for any kind of a folder, it's going to be an auto.
Right. That's why we're here.
When I took your Damascus class, JD, you had some mosaic Damascus that you were working on that you were going to make a Louis Armstrong themed folder. Did you ever get to it?
I still have all the steel for it. I have never used it.
Like the blade had music notes in it, and the bolsters were trumpets. And you were going to carve like Louis Armstrong, look like he was blowing into his trumpet in the ivory handle, and look like horns and notes were coming out of the end of it.
Exactly. I had a lot of help on that project from Rick Dunkerley. Yeah, he helped me a lot on that steel project. At some point, he had come to Mass Art because we had just gotten a hydraulic press. And I invited him to do a week-long seminar at Mass Art just on the use of the hydraulic press in making pattern welded steel. And so one of the things that we did when he was up for that was to make that musical note Damascus.
Oh. A Louis Armstrong.
So you never actually finished that knife yet, from what I understand.
No, I finished it. I never started.
It's just waiting.
Okay, I got you.
It's just
you got the Damascus is there.
I still have the steel. It's all there. I still have that chocolate brown ivory for Louis, and it's just it hasn't come across my notice in a long time. But who knows? Maybe in retirement I'll pull it out again and finish it.
Yeah, there you go.
Chuck is like, I'll help you get.
Sounds like a collaboration.
Could be.
Waiting for the moment to strike. No pun intended. Okay.
But
yeah,
that was cool steel, though, wasn't it, Chucky?
It was awesome. I still remember that.
Now, when did you take this forging class? How many years ago was this?
Oh God, probably like 2006.
Was that far back?
2007.
Chuck, did you learn anything?
That far back.
Paying attention?
It's a long time ago.
I said, Chuck, did you learn anything? You paying attention? How was the class? How was JD as a teacher?
Oh, I did. I still have a pair. I still have some pairs of bolsters that I made in the class. I'm just waiting to use on the right knife.
You walked out of there with some slick-looking steel, man, as I recall. You did good.
I made probably half a dozen billets of steel.
Oh, wow. Okay. So, Chuck, was that at the beginning of your... had you forged before and you were just taking JD's class?
I had done some forging before, but I had never really made Damascus. So it was an opportunity to learn how to make Damascus, the different patterns, and have access to equipment to do it.
Gotta take a class for it. Gotta do it. All right. JD, I got a question for you about your knives. So you've made knives for an extremely long time. They're all they're all out there. What percentage of the knives that you made do you have pictures of? Do you have like memories of? It seems like makers make these things and they disappear into collections, never to be seen again. I mean, do you keep track of it? I mean, do you know the collectors? Do you have what's your connection with the pieces after they're gone?
Almost none. I mean, if I don't know the person, almost none. I know several people who have kept every knife that they bought from me, and they have them.
Wow.
I would say 80% of the knives I've made do have some sort of photographic documentation.
Nice. Okay.
It's quite a lot, actually.
Yeah.
I don't even think I have 80% of mine.
Wow.
And I'm from a time of Instagram and camera phones.
Yeah. I kind of developed my own style of taking a knife photo. I don't like the light backgrounds. I like a dark background. I think the knife looks much better on black than it does on white.
I agree.
Yeah,
it stands out more. Steel looks better.
It seems like for a minute there was a lot of, I want to say early 2000s, there was a lot of yellow and blue and red backgrounds floating around.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure where that came from. I love Coop, but that might
I can tell you where it came from.
What if it was Coop?
Jim Cooper.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because usually Coop goes for those three colors.
Yeah. I mean,
that's Coop.
Coop's cool. I dig him. Those colors. I'm not sure. He makes it work. That's great. But yeah, I favor a darker background, which it's just a knife. It should be seen badass on like a little bit darker, unless less of a light background.
Mm-hmm.
So you have 80% of these knives are photographed and documented. Like, where are these pictures, man? Like, where?
You go. My Facebook page has lots of pictures.
Right.
I've got lots of pictures on my Facebook page of like, for instance, I'll group the knives: buoys, daggers, folders, small users. I'll group them like that, and I'll just do a Facebook. What's the word I'm looking for?
It's like a gallery.
Not a gallery.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll make a gallery out of each class or grouping of knives. And there could be 40, 50 pictures in each one.
Right. Well, it's good to hear that you have coverage of this, because I feel like a lot of knives just, they do just disappear into people's collections. You never see them again.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about, is there a knife that sticks out in your mind over the years that kicked your ass, that really just like, man, like this thing was a pain to build and it was like a heartache? Did you have one of those? You must have. Did it stick out?
Yeah. Matter of fact, it was an auto.
Oh, was it? Okay.
And
all right.
It was an auto, and the knife was named Murphy's Law.
Okay.
Because while I was making it, everything that could go wrong did go wrong, and at the worst possible time.
Oh man. Okay. Was it a speculative build, or was it for an order? I guess we never got to that.
It was a spec build.
Wow. So how did it go? What went wrong? Everything, the whole thing.
Just the garden variety of like shitstorms.
Okay, garden variety shitstorms. Okay.
Yeah, like busted taps and ivory cracking and checking, and
run the gamut on that one, huh?
Run the gamut on it. It gave me 9 kinds of headaches.
Okay. What about the one that you were the happiest with the outcome?
Well, there's been a lot of those.
Okay. Oh, that's good. High percentage. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. There's one that gets more remarks than probably many, many daggers I've done. It was kind of a big, what I call the combat dagger. I call it the Blackmore dagger. It was one of my first multi-billet pattern welding projects, and it turned out exceptionally well. And I probably like that piece. That's probably one of my favorite pieces I've ever built on that one. Back in the day, Jim Wire was doing most knife photography, and that knife is in one of his later books.
Oh wow!
Along with four or five others of mine.
Gracing the pages, huh? Okay, all right, that's serious business. No kidding. The Blackmore. All right, well, I have to make sure that gets posted with the show notes because I would like to see a picture of that.
You know what I'll do? If you look on Facebook and just tag yourself in something or friend me there, I'll make sure you'll get some images that you'll like.
Right on. Okay. Yeah. That works. That works.
Now, I wanted to bring this up when we were talking about your folders, which kind of moved along. So, can you talk a little bit about your Spyderco collab?
Spyderco,
early 2000s.
Yeah, no, they approached me in the late 90s to do something. Sal approached me, I think, in 1998, probably. And I designed something for him that was based on a liner lock that I had done maybe 8 or 9 years earlier. And worked it up into a prototype for him. And they tweaked it a little bit further. Came out with something very nice. Originally, it was done in black micarta, hollow ground, and it had no flexible clip placement or anything like that. And only one liner, which I thought was kind of weird.
It was pretty unique for that time.
Yeah, but in 2009, basically what had happened is I took all the feedback from the 9 years that had been out there and applied it to a new model, which gave it skeletonized inner liners, multiple clip placement, and a full flat ground blade. And we already said multiple clip placements and G10 scales. That was a very, very popular piece. It sold very well.
Sweet. Now, I'd assume the clip placement was a Spyderco thing. They're kind of known for putting 4 clip positions on knives.
Yeah, it was.
Interesting. And those are the only 2 models you ran with Spyderco?
That's right.
Were those ever represented in a custom build by you, or they were just specifically for Sal?
Just for Sal. They were never represented in a custom build by myself.
Now, is that as far as your production collaborations go, or is there anything else?
That's as far as they go. I'd never really worked with anybody else in the like Benchmade or anybody. No, I never did.
Was there a pre-existing relationship with Sal, or it was just sort of out of the blue? Was he just a fan of your work?
The latter. He was a fan of my work.
Oh, that's cool. All right. I have to be honest, I don't know too much about him. I've spoken to Eric on an occasion, but I never spoke to Sal. Did he have any of your? Did he personally own some of your work? Do you know?
I don't know exactly. No, I'm trying to even remember how the connection between Sal and myself even took place. I think it had something to do with the Oregon show, and I think it might have had something to do with Wayne Goddard as well.
Okay, all right,
yeah. Because early on, Wayne was a very, very important person to me as far as like advancing my career and promoting my work. I remember I did the 1992 New York Custom Knife Show, and Wayne was there. And Wayne came over my table and he was looking it over, blah, blah, blah. And, he was very friendly, very nice guy. But he went back and wrote in his local knife club paper, the OKCA club paper, that I always enjoyed doing the New York show and seeing the makers and blah 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 blah. this time I got to talk to some of the newer makers. He said something like that. It says, watch for J.D. Smith. He is my pick for superstar bladesmith of the 90s.
Oh, wow. All right.
And when I saw that, somebody sent it to me, and I was like, what the flying F? And I was like, I can't make a monkey out of this guy. I'm going to have to like step up and be that guy that he says I'm going to be. Right. So Wayne pushed me. He promoted me. Anytime he found something he could say that was complimentary to me, he did it in Blade magazine, and he published articles that I had written and blah blah blah. He did a lot to promote my career, and I got to say, I don't think it would be what it became had it not been for him. He was instrumental in the success of my knife making career, and I'll never forget him for that. And he finally retired from knife making at some point because he was ill. He was not a well man towards the end, and he did decide to retire. And he gave me his personal MS stamp, and that is the stamp I use to mark my work now. Was the stamp that Wayne Goddard belonged to Wayne.
Wow. Okay. Talk a little bit about that's the Master Smith stamp.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Can you go into a little bit about the specificity on what that stamp is and what it means?
The Master Smith stamp, the American Bladesmith Society has a program of advancement for bladesmiths. They can go in as an apprentice smith, work towards a journeymanship, and then finally conclude that program with a Master Smith status. I like this program because I think it is the only knife organization that has any real objective standards for performance. Okay. It's something they concentrate on, and it's something that is an actual requirement to advance. You have to make pieces that perform. Your pieces are tested to destruction. So that you've got to know, you've got to practice for this test and know and have confidence in what your work will actually do in terms of edge retention and strength. So you've got to know these things. They're important to know as a bladesmith. And the ABS, as far as I can tell, are the only ones out there pushing the parameters of performance higher.
I mean, I think it's definitely important to have those standards, right? You got to everyone agree to that, and everyone's got to hold up to that.
Yes. And I also might say that the ABS has come to be a leader in even the aesthetic considerations of knives. Some of the more beautiful knives being made today are coming out of the ABS membership. Kyle Royer and, that French guy, Lurkin, and another guy, and this Mears, and so many people just making really, really beautiful work. Masterful work is coming out of the ABS. So stylistically, they're leaders. Performance-wise, they're leaders.
Wow. Well, you speak very highly of them and then the program. So I mean, it must, it's done well by you, and certainly you stand by it till today.
Yeah, I do, and several of my former apprentices have become master smiths and journeyman smiths.
So when you became well, all right, can you tell us a little bit about you becoming a master smith? What year did you enter or what year did you get your master smith?
1998. I first went up. I went up for journeyman in 1995. At at the time, they permitted you to do your journeyman exam with pattern welded knives. They no longer do. Now they must be all carbon steel. But at the time, that was permissible. And I remember when I had gone up with the pieces I went up with, when I was, when you got your verdict and whatnot, they tell me if the rules had permitted it, they would have just given me my stamp, master stamp, right then and there, but they didn't. Okay, so I had to do the required time and grade before I could test for master. When I did test for master, however, the first time I went up, I didn't make it, and it was a bitter disappointment to me. They saw glue around the pin, and it was over. And like I said, it was a bitter disappointment. So I waited. Although they said they liked my my Keone dagger, that I did not have to do another one of those, but I had to come back next year with 4 new pieces. Well, what I chose to do is I went back with 5 new pieces, because I did another Keone dagger. I said, I'm not. I just wanted to show them I'm not a one-trick pony. I can make another one that work. So I made another one, and I in my grouping of knives, I also presented a folder. Okay, I think I was one of the first people to do that, to actually go into an ABS jury with a folding knife, and that folding knife that I presented basically won me the B.R. Hughes Award at that.
All right.
So the next time I went up, I acquitted my former failure by passing with what you would say were flying colors. I got the B.R. Hughes Award that year. So, I felt very vindicated.
Turn that right around, huh?
I'd imagine.
Mm-hmm.
What's a Keone dagger?
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask that, but I managed to find it on Google.
It's what everybody pronounces Quillian, but it's not spelled Quillian, and it's a Spanish word, and it's pronounced Keone.
Okay.
So is it the one with that serpent-looking sheath scabbard?
No, it's Keone. It means with you've seen the guard on a what they call a Quillian dagger. It refers to those extensions off the guard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I found one that I believe this is the Keone. Yeah, it has like a serpent scabbard.
Okay.
Is that the one that you submitted with the red jewel inlays on the handle, and then the scabbard has it's pretty much like interweaving snakes?
No. That's a new piece. That piece was made.
That's an insane piece.
No, that piece was made by Joseph Schneider and myself, maybe 2010 or 11. I forget which year. But I was already carrying a stamp by that time. Yeah, but it's, and that's a pet peeve of mine. It's not Quillian. It is not spelled that way, and it is not pronounced that way. It is pronounced Keone.
Keone. Okay. All right. That's totally. I appreciate linguistics. I can get behind that. It's pronounce it right. Yeah. So okay. So collaborations. So I mean, you have done and continue to do collaborations regularly.
Yes,
I know
yes,
some knife makers hate other knife makers. They're like, I don't want to mess with other guys, but you've done some and you're doing some now.
Yes. It depends, if you have a good chemistry with someone and your artistic sensibilities are in accord with each other, it can be a very satisfying procedure. Somewhere around like 2007 or so, I hooked up with a Russian metalsmith. His name is Joseph Schneider. And it was kind of an interesting story. It's like his wife and my girlfriend at the time, who was Russian, were at a party, and they were talking, and it was like, my husband, he is jeweler. My boyfriend, he's making knives. The two should meet, and it's like they should meet. They should talk.
You just summed up my life.
Yeah, that's Nick
I
and
get
his
this every
dad.
week.
Yeah.
That's me and my dad working essentially.
So the two girls put us together. They put us together, and so we met. Then then we immediately started planning collaborations and started making them. We turned out some pretty stunning work. Some really, really, really cool work. And I learned a hell of a lot too working with Joseph. Wow. You can't believe like the things he will try and pull off with metal. Yeah. Things you wouldn't even think are possible. He would just go at it hammer and tongs and just carve the living shit out of a piece of steel and turn it into something amazing. And his ability to carve, wax, and cast is like nonpareil. He's just fantastic with that kind of a thing. Plus, he's got an incredible imagination for like imaginary mythical creatures and things like that.
Interesting.
Does really, really great work.
So casting, huh? All right. I mean, that's some next level collaborations. Okay. All right. Wow. I mean, jewelry is like, I mean, that's something that you're familiar with from your past. So I mean, that blends pretty well, actually.
Yep. But I learned so much more from working with him. I learned a hell of a lot more than I ever knew when I worked with him. So who was that said, this is me and my dad working? Are you Russian?
Oh, yeah.
That's my favorite thing.
Chuck actually just texted me. He's like, JD speaks Russian. I'm like, okay.
Ты можешь говорить по-русски?
Да, я родился.
Wait, you speak
I was gonna keep speaking Russian. No, I speak it fluently. I don't know how to read it. That never learned the alphabet, but I speak it.
Я могу читать.
Не могу. So you see the map right there on the server we're using for podcasting. That little island right there in the middle. Well, it's not an island. That very little horizontal piece right there in the middle. That's Brighton Beach, essentially, and that's where all the Russians live in Brooklyn.
Yeah, no, that's where my wife was from.
Yeah, all the Russians in the East Coast are from this neighborhood.
They all just spawned out of that area right there.
They all just came here.
Now I live with a bunch of Russians now.
No, yeah, but I work with my dad. He's been working full time with me for about 8-9 months now. So it's usually the same thing. Now he's like, "Oh, I have this jeweler friend." I'm like, "Oh God, again." It's like, well, once a year, it's like, you should meet this guy. I'm like, "Oh God."
You should.
And then he always goes, "You make knives?" I'm like, "Yeah, I make knives." He's like pocket knives? Yeah. I'm like, they're about $1,000 on average. He's like, "What?" I'm like, "Dude, you make $10,000 rings. Why is this surprising you?"
Right.
I have this jeweler friend. Like, oh God. Escape communist Russia just to work on
still my joke
in Brooklyn. Good. Okay.
No, living amongst Russians is a very, very, very interesting thing. They're really great people. I really like them a lot.
Very unique personalities.
Very unique.
Put it that way.
Very unique. Very unique. It's done wonders for improving my Russian language fluency. It's because I get to speak it every day, essentially.
Yeah, mine got better in the last year or so because my dad works for me, so I have to talk about knife making in Russian, which was a little bit of a challenge because most of the terms are like proprietary that we've come up with.
Exactly. So
I can't really explain to someone how they have to sandblast something, then dip it in ferrochloride, then tumble it, then side in the flats. Like those 4 terms turn into a paragraph that I have to talk out in Russian.
Right. Но потому что я живу здесь, моя способность говорить и понимать по-русски неуклонно улучшается.
Wow.
He has more of a Russian accent in Russian than I do. Like, those people don't understand what he said. I'm like,
I just copy what I hear.
Yeah, but he puts this like this accent on at the end where it's like it's like pretty damn Russian compared to my Russian. Like I speak it fluently, but I don't have a Russian accent on it.
I just copy what I hear. That's
That's pretty awesome.
I mean, when you're immersed in it, right? I guess that's easier to pick it up.
Yeah.
Huh. Wow. Okay. When did you start speaking Russian? Just because of the ladies, or just was it like because of knives?
Oh boy, yeah.
I mean, it's off topic, but you know.
My wife was Belarus, and but I wasn't really interested in it while she was around. Okay, I only became interested in it after her when I started dating another Russian gal.
Oh,
Then I became interested in it.
Okay. All right.
And that was like 2001 or so.
Nice. Okay. That's pretty awesome, especially since you talk like a Russian gangster, and and Nick is immediately okay. All right. Any other side hobbies that we should know about? Like you're secretly like a wizard or something, or like
I'm an inveterate salsa dancer, and
Oh, okay. Is that right?
Yeah,
I just showing off.
Yeah, now you're just okay. All right.
Like, I speak Russian. I can salsa dance.
Okay.
Hey, dude, these are just the facts of my life. I don't know what else to say. I mean, this is my life. This is what I do. This is how I live.
So, like, you're like a professional salsa dancer, or like, what's the deal?
I did do it professionally at some point. Yes.
Wow. Okay. Like, so competition level salsa dancing, huh? Wow.
Yep.
Okay. While speaking Russian, presumably, and forging a blade with the other hand. So
with the other hand.
Yeah, that's is that a clear? Is that we'll just print that. We'll just go with that. The article will read, J.D. Smith, forger, salsa dancer, and fluent, Russian speaker. That's fine. We'll go with that.
Dude, that's only one of the languages I speak. I speak a few more.
Oh, okay. Oh, sure. No, that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, once you get past 3, it's easy.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
You just start dreaming in like multiple languages.
It's a brain plasticity thing.
Yeah, you were okay. That's what I wanted to bring up that we were talking about pre-recording was we were talking briefly about when we were interviewing Reese Weiland, he was talking about the connection between people playing musical instruments and knife makers and the influence that had on what he thought was his design process was being able to transfer like music theory into lines. Do you know about that a little bit?
Oh boy, yes. Well, I don't know how he thinks about it, but I've always thought that making knives and music were they used very similar concepts. Like music is composed of rhythm, melody, and harmony. So is a knife. Melody is the part of music that appeals to your emotions. It can be sad, it can be exciting, it can be it can have a happy mood to it. But melody is what appeals to the heart. That's where the feeling is, okay? The line of a knife, the profile and the shape of the knife corresponds to the melody. The line and shape of a knife, that's what strikes you emotionally first. It's lines. That's the melody. Rhythm is repeating patterns. What the drummer does that repeats, what the bass does that repeats. Things things that repeat in patterns form rhythms. So you can repeat a motif at the butt cap and the spacer or the guard of the knife or different elements that have similar shapes and functions on a knife form the rhythm of the knife. Things that form repeating patterns, that form motifs. This is rhythm, right? And rhythm appeals to let's just say what it is. Rhythm appeals to the kind of animalistic base sexuality, earthy part of the human nature is what rhythm is all about. Okay. Harmony, it's how the different aspects of the knife work together. Just like different notes stacked upon one another can make a chord, the things like color, texture, line, form, when you stack these all up, it puts a harmonious picture together. So harmony, rhythm, and melody function in music the very same way they function in a knife.
Wow. Okay. Once again, very, very, very clearly thought out there. There is no gray area in your process. I mean, that's okay. All right. Harmony, rhythm. Now, do you use the same when you're pattern welding? I mean, does that must be influenced by the same concept? I mean,
Absolutely. I'm thinking of these things all the time.
wow. So music is an underlying subconscious undertone in almost everything you do, and therefore, like you were saying, brain elasticity. I mean, music X knife making X language? Is language influenced by music because your brain was already ready to consume more information and think in the different pattern?
There you go.
That's just too far out, man.
That's a hard yes on that one.
How many languages?
Oh, let me count. This is Russian, Spanish, Korean, German, and a smattering of a few others.
Wow. Okay. Fair enough, sir. Fair enough. Okay. Huh. And now music is you were also saying so music is something that you did professionally for a while as well.
Over 30 years.
No kidding, huh? And what was the instrument that had you?
Trombone.
Okay.
I was a
All right.
trombone player.
You were playing somewhere else, and then you was actually the reason you got to the Bay State was music.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. All right.
I ended up attending Berklee College of Music for 6 years. Graduating, I did a degree in jazz composition. And I played with I played with Dizzy Gillespie, Bobby Hackett, Bobby Hebb, Phil Wilson, any number of musicians, the Manhattans.
That's far out, man. Do you go into the city at all to see music anymore? Is that still like or to play music anymore? Or is that same thing? Retired, just chilling, or what?
Yeah, I put the music down in 1999. I finally put it down permanently in 1999. I've been sort of phasing it out over time, but for the longest time, I was doing music and knives both at the same time.
Wow. I mean, that must have been even more of like a just constant fluidity of process. I mean, if both are coexisting in your head and influencing other, it would be impossible not to.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's like I said, when you get into like your thought process and your brain plasticity, it's a kind of an amazing thing. I mean, the interesting thing is I began teaching myself to play a drum called the djembe. I've been teaching myself to play it just by practicing drum fundamentals with my hands and whatnot. And I noticed that my left hand was significantly less agile than my right. But what I noticed was if I did the same thing with my left hand, that my right hand was doing exactly the same thing, that my left hand would perform exactly the same as my right. It would lose that awkwardness somehow. My brain kind of made a bridge from the left side to the right side in those moments and kind of like took over the process for the left hand. The left side of my brain took over my left hand. It's you could almost see the neurons rearranging themselves while you practice. It's really fast. I found it very fascinating to observe my own brain plasticity at work.
Yeah. It's like mirror teaching the body for phantom limbs when people lose a limb and they look in a mirror and then they realize that the limb's not there and they immediately stop feeling pain even though they haven't had an arm for years. Like it's your brain
Right.
is like I mean really
Right.
it's almost a limitless process once you understand how to really get into changing that process. I mean like you're saying it's just you're your own limitations at a point, you know?
Exactly. Practicing a musical instrument or practicing dance, just kind of like linking your body with music. I found the interesting thing about dance and dancing to music and playing music over time as I improved my, proficiency with dance. I found like it's kind of like a yin yang symbol in as much as music and dance are really related intimately, but in a way that's inverse to each other. In other words, playing music is movement in, you manipulate keys or strings or strike something, movement in, music out. But with dance, it's exactly the opposite. It's music in, movement
Right.
out.
Yeah, the movement is
So,
reaction to that. That's like, yeah.
yeah. So for me, dancing was more or less a kinesthetic experience because I could actually, listening to music, I saw it as colors and shapes. And the dancing part, I would just basically, when I heard music, I would make my body conform to the shapes that I saw that were in my head, and it gave me a very distinctive style.
That whole process is otherworldly to me. I've actually done some reading on that. Like the concept of smelling colors is just so far beyond me in any kind of sober context. I can't yeah. I can't imagine how it must be when music is involved and you're just or how must that translate to hammering steel? I mean, like you're thinking about patterns and you're thinking about the molecular level of bonding. I mean, that's the same idea. That's something in, and then the metal comes out. The patterns come out. It's a representation of the whole thing. That's crazy.
Interestingly enough, a pattern that has had more appeal to me now than it did in the past is what's called the random pattern. I began to notice that when I did a random pattern blade, that the random pattern blade, for those out there who don't know what that is just a pattern that's created from the action of forming the blade with the hammer. That's it. It's the blows that are struck into the steel, and you get a complete record of what you've done when it's finished. What I began to notice was that when I did a random pattern blade, they all were similar in how the patterns were distributed and how they moved. One side looked one way and the opposite side looked another way, and they were similar from blade to blade to blade. And it was all about how I stood, how high I raised my arm before I struck, the level, the height of the anvil. All those factors gave my blades a very distinct personality, and they were similar from blade to blade. I found it very, very interesting to just observe that.
Wow. Okay. So random, but not random. So I mean, Discordian philosophy pushed into the random pattern Damascus. Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah, I've seen some fairly interesting random patterns that actually are striking. It's not a huge favorite in our community, but the Alabama Damascus, a lot of their random patterns I actually kind of dig, just because they do look so completely like otherworldly, like true randomness. I've seen that. That's pretty cool. Huh.
I like it because the record of every blow you struck, you can see it. It's there.
Yeah, the story there is even better, right? I mean, that's cool. I dig that. Every hammer strike, that's a little piece of the steel in there.
That's right. There's a little piece of you.
I'm also a big fan of random, but I don't know. It depends on the person that makes it and their process. Some of my favorite random pattern Damascus will be some of the stuff that Mamasi Fire Arts makes. On the chef knives, he makes some killer random Damascus.
Mamasi, he's a freaking, I don't know what, wizard. He's one of these.
Yeah, I like watching his pattern welding Wednesday videos.
He's amazing. We've hung out, at various hammer ends and talked about his process. And I find that he's a very fascinating guy where that's concerned. Anything I've ever wanted to know about his process, he's always been very willing and shares it freely. And if I ever have any problem with it, he'll just go home and he'll just draw it all out for me and send it to me.
Mm-hmm.
He'll just map it out for me. He'll just diagram it for me.
Yeah, anytime I've asked him something, he's very willing to share his knowledge. I met him a few times at some hammer-ins. I met you a few times at some hammer-ins as well. I haven't been to hammer-in about 4 years, but back when I was working side by side with Aldo, I went to a couple.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned you're retired. So how do you kind of just do your career here and there as you go along? It's not really a full week schedule. So what kind of builds are you concentrating on now that you're getting more choosy with your work schedule?
I decided to go back to making to revisiting kind of some of my former stylistic motifs, like the bigger daggers and with that kind of a leather wrap carved handle thing I do, and Damascus and mochame fittings and things like that. I prefer when I'm doing my own work. I like the stuff I do with Joseph, with the diamonds and the gold and blah 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 blah. But I also like, for myself, to do my own, when I'm doing my own, strictly my own sole authorship work. I like to use humble materials, and by working them skillfully, make them rich. Carving, textures, patinas, things like that. Concentrate on and developing sophisticated ideas and techniques around those kinds of things.
Actually, that's why I'm not the biggest fan of things like Damascus, for example. It's the material that gives you your color, but I'm a big fan of titanium. There's a lot you can do with titanium.
Mm-hmm.
Now, on my side, I use more modern materials compared to what you're used to, but still titanium. There's multiple finishes for it, multiple ways to carve it, grind it, shape it, anodize it, do selective coloring to it. There's a lot you could do with it. That's why I mainly concentrate on titanium frame locks with nicer accents, but I don't go for the full dress stuff usually.
Yeah. Well, for me, it has a more sober and subdued mood to it. I think a weapon should look serious. It shouldn't look kitschy. It shouldn't look all shiny with gewgaws all over it. It should be something that's basically economic with its form and function. Only what's necessary and only what's effective should be seen or used or held. Just you got to strip it down to its essence. That's how it works for me. Maybe some other people would prefer to do more ornate and flowery things, but not me. I don't think of it that way.
I totally understand. I'd probably say it's kind of the same style I go for within my folders. I don't go crazy extravagant. I like straight linear designs, just simple accents. I make a tool that's then an art piece of art.
And
I don't make art that it happens to be a tool.
there you go. There you go. Although I'm of the opinion that, there's no reason why the tools we use should not also be beautiful. Yeah. Aesthetics are important.
Innately useful, but
Yeah.
cosmetically attractive.
Well, when you think about, as makers of things, human beings that we are, aesthetics are very important to us. There is just as important as form and function.
Oh yeah, no, we naturally do want things to be attractive to look at for sure. I mean that's yeah. Otherwise, we'd be in a lot of trouble. Things would be a lot uglier around here than they already are. So as far as the knives go, if the listeners want a knife, they're SOL for the moment. You're retired, and any pieces are already spoken for or not really available. But you're certainly not taking orders anymore.
I'm not taking orders anymore now.
Gotcha. All right.
I mean, recently I had a guy want me to make a folder, and I told him, he was really hot on my tail to make a folder, and he wanted to send a deposit, but I said, don't send me any deposits. Don't pay me for anything I haven't done. Because I don't know when I'm going to get to it. And, I'll keep in touch with you when I'm ready to start it, and he was kind of upset that things weren't a little more set in granite, and basically he canceled it. And there was no skin off my nose. So I just, just rolled right off me. I didn't really care.
I mean, sometimes it goes like that.
Yeah. I mean, even as when I was taking orders, I didn't really accept too much input from the person who was ordering it. I'm going to make the kind of knife I want to make the way I want to make it. And if you like it, you can buy it. If not, go on to something else. But I don't do custom work. I really never have done hardly any custom work. Custom work is when somebody comes in with a design and an idea and they pay you to realize it. Nah, I don't want to work that way.
Those people should learn how to make knives then.
Yeah, if I'm going to work for somebody, I could work for the post office. I just want to I want to make what I want to make the way I want to make it, and that's it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I definitely can see it from both sides. Some people don't mind taking custom orders. Some people want to tell everyone to go to hell, and they just want to make what they want to make. I mean, that's the beauty of the industry is there's collectors for everything and makers for everything else.
Yeah, it's totally legit. That way of doing business is totally legit.
Yeah.
It's just it's not what I prefer personally.
I got you.
Now, JD, how long does one of your average builds take you to make?
Oh hell! Some of those builds I do with the Russian guys, some of those may take 8 or 9 months.
Oh Jesus! Okay.
To complete. But
yeah, those definitely take some time.
Me, on average, if like something I'm working on right now, I got in the works. I got a couple of things in the works. I might spend, if I were to just, throw time in it day after day, it would probably take me a month to build it.
Mm-hmm. Now, it's pretty reasonable for Master Smith quality forging.
Yeah. What's JD? Are you still doing that NCCA show once in a while, or are you just?
I don't do any shows anymore.
No shows.
Once in a while, maybe I might decide to do the OKCA show out in Eugene once in a while. I might go down to and show up at one of the local shows. But as far as like grabbing a table and displaying, I kind of really don't do that anymore.
When's the last time you've done the New York knife show?
New York, 2000 and 8. That's like what?
That was my first ear.
That was like 12 years ago. Yeah, it was like 12 years ago. Yeah,
Just a handful. Just a handful. All right.
And not, I haven't been there since. I haven't done their show since.
Yeah. Well, I think I don't know. I think we just about I think we covered all the topics as far as I can think. I gotta say it's been a ride, man. It's some unexpected turns in that roller coaster. I gotta say.
Really? Like what? I mean, we had a really
the
nice
multiple
interview.
the multiple languages thing. That totally. I did not expect that.
The Russian mobster accent. That was even surprising me.
I was speaking the Russian on the show is pretty. That's some impressive shit, my guy. That's pretty good. Okay. No, that was it was definitely good. I really like I said, I appreciate you coming on and spending some time with us and going over some stories. I say this a lot, but it would be great to have you back on and talk some more at some future date. I think that'd be a blast.
Anytime. I enjoy this stuff. What else do I have to do in retirement?
Yeah, there you go. See? War stories,
especially in the current times we're in too.
Yeah. All right. Cool, man. Well, on that note, then, thanks for listening. That was another awesome episode of Bladeology. This is Jeremiah Burbank from PVK Vegas, and I'm signing off.
This is Nick Truprin of NCC Knives. You can find me on NCC Knives on Instagram or nccKnives@yahoo.com. Signing off.
This is Chuck Gudritis of Gudritis Knives. You can find me on Instagram or Facebook under Gudritis Knives. Signing off.
This is J.D. Smith of Hammersmith Knives and Publications. You can find me on Facebook or AmarusBladeArts.com. Thank you very much.